Hello Internet, I'm Michael Giltz covering the Cannes Film Festival for Huffington Post.
And I'm Jay Sperling-Reich covering the Cannes Film Festival for Showbiz Sandbox.
That's right, and this is our politics episode. There's been a lot of politics at this year's festival. It happens a lot at Cannes. There will be some big issue or some big movie that will cause a stir. One year, monks threw themselves on the red carpet protesting the Da Vinci Code. Another year, Michael Moore won the Palme d'Or with Fahrenheit 9/11, obviously a very political film.
Last year there was the film about Algeria, which had basically all the gendarmerie along the Croisette to protect the festival goers from any political protests that might happen.
That's right.
So
it's very common that politics will be involved in the festival, but this is the first year, or this year more than ever, there have been so many different political issues that have come up in the fest, both in the movies and just outside in the world, impinging on the festival.
Yes, and I think that I would say not only politics, but there seem to be themes that run through the festival from day to day. But in this case, we're talking about politics.
That's right. So this year we've had a documentary about the death of Princess Diana, which the filmmakers claim was a murder. We've had a film about the oil spill, which we'll talk about in a minute, called The Big Fix. We had, of course, the head of the IMF is French. He was one of the leaders in the polls to replace Nicolas Sarkozy as the head of France in the next election. And of course, he's involved in a huge scandal. Cannes is literally like 10 days of Oscar-like coverage on television. It is constant and ongoing.
Here in France.
Here in France.
Yes.
This year, however, they keep cutting to the latest news about the IMF scandal. So that really has...
Well, it's not a scandal about the IMF so much as it is a scandal about the IMF.
The former head. Well, I think
he's still the head, but until he gets...
Right, but it's really just been unbelievable. And, different movies will get laughs because of jokes or lines that somehow apply to that, and everybody has that on their brain.
Just coincidentally.
Yes, exactly. So this year is really, really a big, big year for politics. And I think we should start with The Big Fix.
Well, The Big Fix is about the oil spill, the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico that happened on April 22nd of last year.
They call it the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. There's some political reason they don't call it the
Well,
BP.
because the Deepwater Horizon was owned by a specific company, then BP leased it from that company.
All the better to keep your hands clean.
That's right, and that's exactly what this film is about. It was directed by Josh Tickle and his wife Rebecca Tickle.
She's the co-director.
Co-director, yes, and they... he directed a film called Fuel, which was a kind of a critical favorite at the Sundance Film Festival. I want to say it was in 2008, but it was about alternative fuel. And he starts out the film by talking about how his goal in life is to educate people about alternative fuel. So by doing that, he's already saying what you're about to see is slanted because I'm anti-oil. And he starts off...
Is that the Fuel or this movie?
That's this. I'm sorry. That is The Big Fix.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
and he starts the film way back in Iran in the 1950s and explains how BP came about, and then how the oil companies have kind of raped and pillaged in Louisiana, and the politics behind Louisiana oil. He then goes. I mean, it's just a long, long movie. I would say it was at least 2 hours, and it goes from topic to topic to topic, from Louisiana and the politics of oil, to the oil spill itself, to why the oil spill happened, and how BP's safety record affected it, and then
the media coverage of it?
The media coverage of it, the spraying of dispersant, which may be worse than the oil spill itself, onto the oil spill, and why BP did that, because you only get fined for the oil that you can see, so if you have a dispersant, which atomize, I mean, it goes on and on and on and on, all the way through to the banks and the financial crisis, and how the banks are beholden to the oil companies, who are beholden to the banks, who are beholden to the politicians. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Well, that's the main complaint I've heard about the film, that they have a lot of effective points that they make, but it's so overwhelming. I mean, it's not about simply this oil spill and the economic and natural disaster that it will be for decades to come, and it will take a good decade before we even begin to know what the effects are through the life cycle of animals and the fishing industry and all that. But as you say, it just goes off into... Does it feel like it goes off into so many directions, or do you just get a little like, oh my god?
It's just so overwhelming because there's so many facts being thrown at you, and they're not necessarily untrue, but you kind of begin to wonder, how slanted is this? Because we're not seeing anything that's either positive or objective, in a way. That's kind of middle of the road.
Well, that was I'll call it a weird complaint I saw in some reviews. They said, well, there was nobody on the other side presented who wasn't compromised. They didn't have any sort of nonpartisan scientists who ever questioned anything that the filmmaker said. But to me, it's like, if you have a oil spill of this magnitude, and the chemicals that they introduced in the water, the dispersants, any real scientist would at best say, we don't know what the effects are, and it's going to be a long time before we do know. Nobody genuinely would say, oh, everything's fine.
Right,
that's true. So there's no way to find someone. It's like saying you made a movie about evolution, and you didn't find that good non-partial scientist who says, there's a lot of questions about it. Well, they don't exist, so therefore...
Right. Well, I mean, it's an interesting film. It was engaging throughout. It did feel a little long. Much like The Inside Job, which played here last year in competition. Now, mind you, Cannes is not a festival that's known for documentaries.
More so in recent years.
That's right. Ever since Fahrenheit 9/11, they've had more and more documentaries. Actually, ever since Welcome to Columbine,
yes.
which Michael Moore's film prior to 9/11, they've begun to show more and more documentaries.
Both in competition and other areas.
In sidebars. Now, The Big Fix is kind of showing out of competition.
Yes.
Inside Job, I think, was also out of competition.
I think so, yeah.
And Inside Job was about the Wall Street meltdown, directed by Charles... I'm going to forget his name. Ferguson?
Is this movie as good as that film?
The Inside Job did a much better job of bringing all the facts together and gelling them in a more narrative way. It was a much tighter film.
Do you think The Big Fix will reach to people who aren't already sold on, Greenpeace and how bad the big oil is?
Well, if the screenings here are any indication, the press screening was practically empty.
Oh, really?
So, yes, and it had a few walkouts just because it ran so long. Not because the film was bad, it was just a long film.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it could reach people. It certainly makes a huge impact in terms of the point it's trying to make. It definitely gets that across.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are two films that are more interest to the French people probably than Americans, but we'll cover them.
That is an understatement, but yes.
One is called The Conquest. It is about the current French president, Nicolas Sarkozy, who is on the right, and he's president, but he's embroiled in...
I don't see him anywhere.
He's embroiled in terrible, terrible polling right now. He has, record lows for his presidency.
Well, and he's probably best known in the United States as Mr. Carla Bruni.
Well, Bruni, I think.
Bruni.
But, of course, they don't know who she is. But she does appear in Woody Allen's new movie, Midnight in Paris. So Nicolas Sarkozy and his wife, Carla Bruni, were at the festival for opening night. I don't think most Americans...
Was that confirmed? I don't think they actually
ever
showed up.
They never showed up,
no.
Oh, I beg your pardon. They were supposed to attend. But this film is a fictionalized look at his rise to power. It begins on the night he's elected president of France, the leader of the country, and flashbacks to show his political career and how he got there, and his ins and outs with his then wife.
Celia.
Yes.
Who I would imagine is Celia Sarkozy.
She was. I don't know if she's changed her name. But so it was actually pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it would be like if you were from a foreign country watching a film about an American president and American politics, you might not recognize all the players. If Newt Gingrich showed up, you might not really recognize who that was and what the significance of that particular character or person in the narrative is. So there might be a few points or jokes that kind of go over your head, much the way that happened in what is The Conquest, directed by, I don't know if you mentioned Xavier Duringer.
No, I didn't mention his name. But for me, I was surprised. Actually, I feel the film is pretty universal in the sense that they're politicians. They're grasping for power. They're fighting each other. They've got their staff. So actually, it worked pretty well.
It does work pretty well. I mean, even not knowing the system here in France about how a prime minister is selected and the importance...
He's lower than the president.
Lower than the president, and the Minister of the Interior is actually a really important title, and second in line. I mean, we had at least I did not have any clue how the French political system worked. I now have a little bit more of a clue after seeing not only The Conquest, but we're going to talk about Pater in a moment.
Yeah.
But it was engaging.
Yeah, I doubt the film will play in America. It wasn't a good film. It was pretty good. It was okay. It was painless to watch, which frankly is a compliment.
Painless to watch in Cannes. Yeah, that is. Yeah.
But it felt more like a TV movie, a little superficial, a little light. But I did enjoy the lead performances by the person playing Jacques Chirac and
the former president.
And Nicolas Sarkozy. I thought they were both very fun. It was more enjoyable than I expected.
Yes, I would agree with that.
But how was Pater?
Well, you mean the parts I didn't sleep through?
Yes. What is Pater?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the festival, we've now reached what is commonly referred to as festival fatigue, and that is when you've stayed up far too late watching films and filing your stories that you actually start to get tired. So when you see a film like Pater,
it's Latin for father, of course.
Yes.
Pater, I suppose.
And it's about an older gentleman and kind of a middle-aged gentleman, so probably somebody in his late 40s and early 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And the older gentleman, they're both actors. and I guess they're well-known actors here in France, and one is a well-known filmmaker, and the older gentleman kind of treats the younger one, a younger, middle-aged man, as kind of it's like a father-son relationship. And they start off, you don't really know what they're talking about or discussing, but they decide that they're going to make a film about wanting to become the next president of France. And the older gentleman is the current president and is trying to groom the younger, middle-aged man to become the next Do
they just sit around and talk, or do they enact scenes?
It then becomes more of like a pseudo-documentary. You don't know whether it's
a mockumentary.
Well, not really, because they're not really mocking anything. But it's not a satire in that regard. But they actually do whole scenes as if they are the president and prime minister of France, with all of these people coming in and out as if they are other political figures. You have no idea what's real and what's not.
There's nothing to compare it to that you can think of as far as American.
Certified Copy. From last year, which was
a French film.
A French film. That was a much better version because it had a narrative, a beginning, middle, and end. There really was a question as to what was real and what was fake, and they actually addressed the fact that there are fake things that are actually better than the real thing. And whereas this, you had no clue.
Juliette Binoche, correct?
Correct. Yes.
This movie, from every American journalist I spoke to, they just hated it. They really were bored out of their minds.
It was boring to begin with. The person next to me fell asleep, which I think was contagious because the person next to them fell asleep. But it really, there was nothing for people outside of France and people who are not in the know on the French political system to grasp onto.
But was there a different reaction from the European press? Did you feel like?
Well, I saw the actual competition screening, so there was a lot of applause. But at that point, the filmmakers there, the actors are there. They'll stand up and clap for 10 minutes for anything. So.
Yeah, that's a little clue. When you read that a film got a standing ovation at Cannes, that sounds so exciting. It literally happens for virtually every film.
Yes.
At the official public screening. We usually see movies
at the press screenings.
At a press screening, which is much earlier in the day or at different times, so we're not seeing it with the public and the filmmakers often. It depends, but certainly in competition, we're usually seeing it in the morning. We don't get standing ovations.
No.
People boo and they applaud. There's that and back and forth. But the public one, it's like a Broadway show. Nowadays, people feel obliged to give a standing ovation. So,
yes.
Of the three movies, would you give a standing ovation to any of them? The Big Fix?
No. I mean, I would not give a standing ovation to any of them.
But was it Jeff Goodell of the Rolling Stone who is
in the Big Fix?
He's in the Big Fix, and does he come across? I know his reporting has been very good on that. Does he come across well? Do you feel like he's the star voice as far as people?
Well, because there were so many talking heads in that film, he's just one of many. And he is very knowledgeable on the subject. He was down in the Gulf area for months, documenting and reporting on this issue, and his reporting from that issue was really, really good. If there is kind of an objective voice, it's his.
All right, so if you want to get outraged again about the man-made disaster that was that oil spill, or you want to inform yourself a little bit, check out The Big Fix when it comes to America. And Pater and The Conquest, perhaps not so much.
Pater, I wouldn't necessarily recommend. The Conquest, it's fun. I mean, it's a fun political movie.
I wouldn't recommend it, though.
Oh, I think if you're interested in foreign politics,
okay,
and you're interested in that type of personality, he is a force to be reckoned with, then it's an interesting movie.
Cool. Well, keep checking in. We also do a podcast, of course, Showbiz Sandbox. Where can people find it?
ShowbizSandbox.com is you can go to the website where we have all of our past episodes, or you can find all of our episodes on iTunes, the iTunes Marketplace.
Just type in Showbiz Sandbox, or if you're watching this on Huffington Post, go to the bottom of the story, and you'll find links to all that stuff. So, thanks for listening and watching.